January 11th, 1945. In the biting cold, the thick fog settled low over the Rhine River, wrapping the landscape in a shroud of icy silence. The world was stark white, a blanket of snow covering the stark remains of war, transforming the battlefield into an otherworldly scene of hushed desolation. The air was crisp, painfully so, as if the very essence of winter bore witness to the violence that had unfolded mere months earlier. As the sun struggled to rise above the horizon, shimmers of light danced eerily on the frozen surface of the water, illuminating the silhouettes of trees, bare and haunting against the pale backdrop. The chill cut through the layers of military-issued clothing worn by the men stationed along the banks, their breath visible as puffs of steam in the frigid air. Tension buzzed among the troops, every slight sound a potential harbinger of danger, a whisper of the enemy lurking in the shadows beyond the frosty veil. They had come to this location under the auspices of routine reconnaissance, but beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of anxiety. They were at the front line of a war that felt endless, a conflict that had consumed nations and families. Each soldier was acutely aware of the sacrifices made, understanding that victory could demand not just courage, but ingenuity. It was here, amidst the stillness and uncertainty, that Private James Holloway, an infantryman with dreams of returning home, stumbled upon something unexpected. A Panther tank, half buried in the snow like a great beast, succumbing to the elements. Its once formidable hull, cloaked in frost, seemed to call out to the weary men, a relic of the battlefield longing to rejoin the fray. The sleek, angular profile of the Panther contrasted sharply with its surroundings. It was a magnificent machine, a marvel of German engineering, revered for its speed and firepower. Holloway's heart raced. Thoughts of pandemonium danced in his mind. If they could get it operational, it could shift the balance in their favor, offering cover and intimidation that could reclaim lost ground. But they could hardly believe their luck. As they gathered around the tank, excitement mingled with apprehension. What awaited them inside could turn the tide of war or lead them into a trap. The Panther was undoubtedly a treasure, but with such complexity came a web of challenges. Mechanics to unlock, systems to understand. A beast that had lain dormant, now requiring the touch of men who had never operated one before. With each soldier standing shoulder to shoulder, their breath fogging in the cold, a realization dawned. They were not just faced with a mechanical challenge, but one of nerves and teamwork. Could they resurrect this mechanical titan, or would it become another ghost of war, a grave marker in their relentless fight? As they approached the tank, the weight of the past reverberated through them. It was more than just metal and machinery. It was a symbol of warfare itself, complicated, brutal, and often unforgiving. Holloway could feel history pressing down upon him like the heavy snowflakes that continued to fall. Here was a moment full of potential, yet tinged with risk. An opportunity that could ignite their fate amidst a winter landscape rife with uncertainty. The stakes were high, potentially changing not just the fortunes of the battle, but of the war ahead. Beneath the layers of ice and snow lay a glimmer of hope, but with it, the hidden danger of the past looming ever larger. As they began to survey the tank, a powerful storm of emotions swirled within them, and one thing became increasingly clear. This was but the beginning. March 24, 1945, the sound of gunfire crackled across the Rhine, mingling with the mournful cries of a land steeped in destruction. As dawn broke, its light revealed the shattered remnants of a once mighty German war machine, twisting under the weight of defeat. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and anxiety, and as the American troops advanced into Germany, they were not just crossing a river, they were stepping into the echoes of history, into the last days of World War II. The Rhine crossing was pivotal, a bold move by the Allies that heralded the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. In those treacherous waters, the conflict had reached a crescendo, with each crossing heralding a final push towards Berlin. But as the Allies surged forward, the German forces were in disarray, their once formidable strength reduced to a desperate struggle against the inevitable. Nearly a year into their slow march toward victory, the fall of their Reich was all but certain. It was a time rife with tension and fear, punctuated by the echoes of artillery and the frantic scrambling of troops facing the end of their world. Amidst this chaos, a group of U.S. soldiers found themselves drawn toward something unexpected. As they sifted through the remnants of the German war effort, they stumbled upon a Panther tank, its sleek, menacing profile still relaying the ghost of its former glory. This was no ordinary find. The Panther was hailed as one of the finest tanks of its time, a masterpiece of engineering designed to combat the very forces now inspecting it. Shrapnel and rust painted its once smooth lines, but its presence still commanded respect. Remnants of a technological marvel that had once required a human touch, now turned to a relic of desperation. The soldiers approached cautiously, their hearts quickening not just from the thrill of discovery, but from the complex reality of the machine that towered before them. Within the frigid silence of its metal shell lay the stories of countless soldiers, victories, and defeats. They were about to encounter not just a vehicle, but a lid on the Pandora's box of a dying regime, filled with half-mechanical hopes that spoke of innovation and despair. Through each heavy breath, the tension escalated. The Panthers were notorious for their advanced engineering, powerful engines, precision optics, and a commanding firepower that had wreaked havoc on the battlefield. But here, in this critical moment, the soldiers faced a unique challenge: how to start and control this remnant of a past adversary. Their military training was about to be put to the test in unexpected ways, exemplifying the strained but determined spirit that had carried them this far. As they began exploring the tank's intricacies, they confronted a disheartening truth. The innovations that had once placed the Panther at the forefront of armored warfare now served as an overwhelming testament to the broken spirit of the German forces. Could the very machines designed to conquer their troops now become their next burden? The complexity of the design spoke volumes about a war that had spiraled beyond mere tactics. The technological arms race that had captured both nations for years was now a somber reflection of struggle and loss. In those fleeting moments, the soldiers realized the irony of their situation. What was once a tool of destruction could serve as a new chapter in their own mechanized warfare. The stakes were never clearer. As they stood amongst the debris, it became obvious that the path ahead would require more than firepower. It would demand ingenuity and resilience in the face of a relentless tide of history, echoing the tumultuous end of an empire that had carved so much pain across Europe. With the weight of a world hanging heavy, the soldiers prepared to delve deeper into the enigma of the Panther. Every twist and turn, every observation and misstep would unravel layers of history, technology, and the complex psychology of warfare that defined an era. As their hands gripped the tools of discovery, the soldiers felt the inhale of a future still unwritten, surrounded by the creaking remnants of a past that would not easily let go. Amidst the rumble of distant artillery and the acrid scent of burnt gunpowder, a gray dawn broke over the battle-scarred fields of Europe on April 29, 1945. The air was thick with tension, each breath echoing the uncertainty swirling in the hearts of American soldiers. They had charged through France, nearing the final push into Germany, but nothing could prepare them for what lay ahead. As the sun rose, its light illuminated a sight that would spark awe and disbelief in equal measure. A Panther tank, a formidable beast of steel and engineering, lay abandoned in the mud. Its once majestic silhouette was marked by the scars of war, yet it still towered over the landscape, a testament to Germany's technological prowess. The soldiers, weary from battle but driven by curiosity, gathered around the machine, captivated by its presence. Sergeant James Wright, a seasoned veteran, stood at the front, eyeing the tank with a mix of fascination and incredulity. "Is this really what they've been using against us?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the murmurs of his comrades. With its angled armor and powerful 75mm gun, the Panther was designed to outmaneuver and outgun the best American tanks. Each line of its chassis seemed to embody both intimidation and innovation, a grim reminder of the enemy they faced. The soldiers rushed forward, drawn in like moths to a flame, while awe settled heavily in the air. They were not just looking at an enemy machine. They were gazing at a piece of engineering that had reshaped the battlefield. Hand-etched tactical markings adorned its body, each scratch and dent telling a story of its combat history. "Unbelievable," muttered Private Mark Johnson, shaking his head in disbelief. Then, with a shared mixture of excitement and trepidation, the troops gathered around, emboldened by their curiosity. One soldier, pulling on mechanic's gloves, began to explore the intricacies of the Panther's engine bay. He peered into the labyrinth of wires and components, and soon the reality of their situation began to dawn on them. The daunting complexity of the Panther's design revealed itself like an enigma, almost mocking their eagerness. "Look at this," he exclaimed, tracing a finger along a series of interconnected gears and levers. "It's like a clockwork nightmare. No wonder they've been taking us out left and right." The sheer sophistication of the tank's systems was overwhelming. It was not just a weapon, but a marvel of engineering meant to instill fear. As the Americans exchanged glances, the weight of the situation pressed down on them. They realized they could not simply hop in and drive off. The Panther was a monster to be tamed, a technological giant that held secrets within its iron shell. "This isn't just another tank," Sergeant Wright thought, his brow furrowed, wrestling with the implications of facing such advanced machinery. "It's going to take more than guts to conquer this beast." Yet, precisely in that moment of hesitation, a profound realization washed over the men. Amidst the chaos of war, the ingenuity of the enemy was perhaps more formidable than its firepower. Here, before them, was a symbol of shared humanity and its unyielding desire to innovate, to survive against the odds. With a heartbeat of reflection, They stepped back, taking in the full scale of their challenge. What lay before them was not merely metal and machinery, but a legacy forged in conflict, embodying both the terror and the honor of war. For a moment, time seemed frozen. The soldiers found themselves reflecting on what it meant to confront such an intricate beast in the midst of chaos. As the dawn continued to brighten the horizon, they stood together, united in their resolve to face whatever awaited them, preparing to not only battle the enemy, but to understand and conquer the innovations that had changed the face of warfare. Could they unravel the complexities of the Panther, or would it become just another ghost of war, haunting them from the shadows? The question lingered in the chilly air, while the looming shadows of the past tightened their grip on the present. In the early morning light of March 9, 1945, the air was thick with the stench of diesel and the distant echoes of gunfire. A dew-soaked mist rolled over the forest floor, kissing the rusting metal of the Panther tank nestled amidst the trees. The U.S. troops, weary from endless days on the front lines, gathered as word spread like wildfire. They had found a rare relic of the enemy's might. Sergeant Miller, a seasoned mechanic with calloused hands and a veteran's weariness in his eyes, was the first to step forward. His brow furrowed as he examined the sleek lines of the Panther, a vehicle known for its impressive armor and firepower. "This beauty's a challenge, boys," he declared, his voice a mix of admiration and caution. "It's not just a simple fix." Private Thompson shuffled in his combat boots, his youthful eagerness contrasting sharply with the grim determination of his superior. "What's the big deal, Sarge? We've handled plenty of tanks before." He beamed, a spark of naivete flickering in the tension-filled air. The other soldiers stifled a chuckle. Thompson had yet to face the ingenuity of German engineering. Lieutenant Carter, overseeing the operation with his commanding presence, joined them, arms crossed and lips pursed. "It's not just about turning the key. This tank has quirks, complications. We don't want to turn a valuable asset into scrap." His gaze drifted over the hefty turret, as thoughts of what it could mean in the hands of the Allies filled his mind. The Panther, a formidable foe, could soon tip the scales of battle if they could get it operational. Each soldier felt the weight of their collective responsibility. The world outside this moment, embroiled in conflict, sharpened their urgency. Miller's seasoned eye scouted for any visible damage, while Thompson listened intently, eager to learn, but struggling with the detailed instructions that Miller began to lay out. "The engine's complex will need to check the fuel lines, the ignition, and most importantly, the electrical systems," he instructed. His voice rose steadily, filled with intensity, as he shared crucial knowledge. The mechanics of war extended beyond machinery. They were woven into the very fabric of their relationships. Tension hung in the air, a mix of camaraderie and frustration. Thompson's excitement clashed with Miller's somber pragmatism. "You need to respect what you don't understand, Private," Miller reminded him, feeling the inexperienced spirit of the young soldier stir a deep-seated concern within him. The fate of their mission hung in the balance, echoing Miller's own past regrets. With each wrench and screw, Thompson tried to keep up, his enthusiasm slowly tempered by the intricacies unveiling before him. This was not merely a tank. It was a testament to the enemy's engineering prowess, a tangible object promising both danger and opportunity. As the sun rose higher, their surroundings lit up with purpose. The Panther was a haunting reflection of their shared vulnerability, leading them closer to understanding their adversary while revealing the fractures in their own unity. Miller, attuned to the emotional currents of his comrades, couldn't shake the feeling of impending loss. He shared stories of his own battles, hoping to mold Thompson's raw ambition into something resilient. "Everyone has their strengths in this unit," he declared. "Trust each other, and we stand a better chance, whether it's starting this tank or surviving the war." As the scent of engine grease mingled with the cold morning air, the stakes escalated. The Panther was a fragile thread pulling together the experiences of those who understood its power, and the naive hope of one who sought to prove himself. In the heart of enemy territory, they were not just mechanics. They were gatekeepers of destiny, where every interaction held the potential to either forge them into warriors or fracture their unity. Later, as laughter punctuated the morning's tension, the team grew closer, united by the endeavor. They all knew that soon they would either rise in victory or plunge deeper into the chaos that war could bring. The moment grew more intimate, the collective heartbeat quickening as they prepared to take their first real step toward an uncertain resolution. With every turn of a wrench, the Panther promised both danger and the prospect of glory. In this tangled web of machinery and humanity, their shared journey had only just begun. Soon, they would come face to face with the specter of history, and their own resilience would be tested. In the chill of early morning, on April 12, 1945, a veil of mist hung low over an abandoned battlefield in Germany, painting the landscape in muted shades of gray. The scent of damp earth mixed with the faint remnants of gunpowder lingered in the air, as if the soil itself held the weight of the conflict that had unfolded there. As the sun began its slow ascent, beams of light pierced through the fog, illuminating a rusting relic of a bygone era, the Panther tank. The troops, weary yet resolute, gathered around the massive armored vehicle, their hearts pulsing with a sense of anticipation and trepidation. The Panther, once feared by Allied forces, now lay silent and still. A beast that had tasted blood but could no longer roar. They approached it with both reverence and dread. The machine that had brought destruction was now a puzzle demanding to be solved. Sergeant Mitchell, a seasoned mechanic with grease-stained hands and a determined gleam in his eyes, stepped forward. "If we can get it running, it might just turn the tide for us," he declared, rallying the spirits of his fellow soldiers. But the Panther was notorious for its complexity. The mechanics of this German war machine were labyrinthine, filled with systems that seemed to function in a language all their own, foreign yet enticing. With an air of hope mixed with despair, the men started their efforts. First came the fueling system, a task that felt straightforward, yet quickly revealed its layers of complication. They struggled with valves and valves within valves, each twist and turn a reminder of the advanced engineering that German designers had poured into the tank. Fuel lines, some clogged with the residue of decades past, mocked their endeavors. The gasoline they poured did not seem to find its way where it was needed. Disappointment began creeping in as the engine loomed before them like an unyielding fortress. Sergeant Mitchell, feeling the weight of frustration building upon his shoulders, moved on to the ignition system. The reach of wires and connectors tangled like a web, each potentially vital connection beckoning with a silent challenge. The soldiers exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. What had once seemed a promising venture now felt like an uphill battle against time and the elements. "Do we even know what we're doing?" one of the privates muttered, the echo of self-doubt piercing the air like a gunshot. But Mitchell, driven by unyielding hope, remained focused. "We follow the manuals," he replied, waving a tattered book filled with faded diagrams and annotations, as if it shielded them from despair. Yet, the manual was as complicated as the tank itself. Deciphering instructions turned into trials of patience and understanding. The ignition ritual began, a succession of twists and turns, as they fought not only against the intricacies of mechanics, but against the ghosts of uncertainty. Time passed slowly, the sun creeping higher in the sky, casting shadows that lengthened and stretched. With a shaky hand, one soldier pressed down on the starting lever, a collective breath held, ears straining in anxious anticipation. The engine sputtered, coughed, but failed to roar to life. A silence followed, suffocating and profound, echoing their shared disappointment. These moments illustrated the technological wonder that the Panther represented, a masterpiece of warfare that had shifted the tides of conflict, yet now it lay inanimate, a prisoner of American ingenuity and will. Every failed attempt at starting breathed life into their frustrations and deepened their resolve. The group began to question, could they truly resurrect this beast, or were they merely chasing a ghost? As they prepared to make yet another attempt, it became evident that this struggle was more than mechanical. It showcased a clash of wills, a test of determination. Troubled minds contemplated the implications of their endeavor, for this tank was more than just metal. It was a symbol of their fight for survival, entwining their fates with the remnants of history. The morning stretched on, filled with longing for conquest, and with it, a sense of irony settled over the group. Here they were, the very soldiers who had once fled from the Panther's wrath, now tangled in the intricate knots of its mechanisms, struggling against their own limits. Would they succeed, or would their efforts serve only to remind them of the complexity of war? In the face of uncertainty, their determination remained unwavering, even as the shadows of the past loomed larger with each failed attempt. As the morning sun broke through the thick, overcast skies of February 22, 1945, a chilly wind whispered through the dense trees of the German forest. The air, filled with the scent of damp earth and smoke, mingled with the tension palpable among the soldiers. The muffled sounds of distant artillery served as a backdrop, while a group of American troops clustered around the Panther tank, its imposing silhouette casting a long shadow on the ground. Hope had all but faded after hours of frustrating attempts to ignite the formidable machinery. The crew, looking weathered and defeated, shared exhausted glances, their breaths visible in the crisp air. Among them was Private Thompson, who stood, brow furrowed in thought, recalling the technical manual he had stumbled upon in a dimly lit supply room just days before their deployment. It was barely legible, its pages crumpled and stained, but something inside him sparked at the memory of the forgotten method it described, an intricate yet crucial ignition procedure. "Wait a second," Thompson called out suddenly, his voice rising above the murmurs of despair. The others turned toward him, interest flickering back to life like an ember in a dying fire. "I think I found something that could work." The soldiers leaned in, their faces an eager blend of skepticism and hope. Thompson's hands gripping the manual tightly, he read aloud sections detailing a unique blend of compression and fuel ignition. It requires precise pressure in the fuel line, a sequence we haven't tried yet, he explained, his excitement bubbling to the surface. If we can get the engine turning over and balance it all, we might just coax this tiger out of its slumber. With renewed determination, they sprang into action. Each soldier carefully followed Thompson's instructions, the air thickening with anticipation. Their hands moved expertly, clearing out debris, adjusting valves, and double-checking the fuel lines. The tank, a behemoth of engineering, was once again the center of attention, its cold metallic skin almost whispering promises of power and might. Time seemed to stretch as the troop worked feverishly. The tension mounted with every clang of metal, every muttered encouragement exchanged among friends. Finally, bathed in the pale light filtering through the trees, they stood at the brink of a breakthrough. Thompson took a breath, his heart racing, and turned the ignition key. The sound of cranking echoed through the glade, mocking them in its familiar mechanical rhythm. And then a sputtering cough emerged from the engine. Gasps broke from the soldiers' lips. Was this it? With each futile attempt that followed, their collective hope surged and waned like the waves in the sea, crashing against the rocks with relentless force. Then, in a moment that felt both endless and instant, the engine barked back to life. The sound thundered through the forest, shaking off the fog of despair like a hard-won victory. Cheers erupted among the troops. They exchanged astonished looks, their faces lighting up with sheer disbelief and joy. The Panther tank, once an unyielding puzzle, now roared in affirmation. Yet as the noise settled, thoughts of the heavier implications loomed. This breakthrough wasn't just about starting a machine. It marked a psychological turning point for the soldiers. It reminded them that, in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, ingenuity and persistence could bend the odds in their favor. Private Thompson stared at the idling tank, flooded with both pride and trepidation. A fateful choice lay ahead. They would turn this engine into a tool of warfare, a weapon against the enemy. Reflecting on the journey that had led them here, the irony sat heavy on their hearts. This towering machine, a masterpiece of German engineering, now became their ally in a conflict that sought to swallow them whole. As they prepared to mount their newfound beast, the real battle was just beginning. "Let's ride," Thompson declared, the thrill of victory coursing through their veins, a reminder that complexities could be unraveled, one ingenious stroke at a time. With the sun setting on a chill October evening in 1944, the forest echoed with the muffled sounds of machinery and the distant crackle of gunfire. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that seemed to vibrate in the lives of the men gathered around the found relic of the war, a Panther tank, long abandoned yet silently waiting for revival. Sergeant Miles, a veteran of countless tumultuous battles, stepped forward, his heart pounding like the drum of fate. He had watched with weary eyes as his squad toiled day and night, stripping away the layers of rust and neglect that held the Panther captive. Overcoming skepticism, they worked tirelessly under dimming skies, driven by the hope of unraveling its dormant power. The stakes had never felt higher. As the last hours of their efforts unfolded, the soldiers gathered with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They exchanged glances filled with unspoken questions. Could they actually bring this beast back to life? Specialist Thompson, The young mechanic, with hands worn from years of grease and grime, leaned close to the engine compartment, the tiniest hint of confidence spilling from his lips. "This is it, boys. Let's give her a chance." With every turn of the wrench, the roar of the machine lingered just beyond their grasp. The tension became a living entity coiling around them. Would this old warrior answer their call? Finally, on that fateful evening, Sergeant Miles took a deep breath and turned the ignition key. The air held its breath. Moments passed like eons, and then the sound pierced the stillness. A deep, guttural growl erupted from the heart of the tank, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The Panther surged to life, its engine roaring with the ferocity of a jungle cat finally free from its slumber. Shock waves of exhilaration washed over the soldiers as they stumbled back, laughter mingling with disbelief. "We did it! We actually did it!" echoed through the trees, a victorious salute to their determination. The power radiated not just from the tank, but from the men who had put their hearts, hopes, and even frustrations into this moment. The ground trembled as the Panther shook with renewed strength, its chassis a monument to their dedication. In that instant, time stood still. Their triumph stood before them, an iron giant born anew. Each soldier felt a distant connection to those who had once manned this formidable beast, a fleeting reflection of shared histories and battles fought. Here stood not just a machine of war, but a symbol of resilience, camaraderie, and shared dreams for a better tomorrow. As they gathered around, reveling in the echoes of their success, questions of the past faded. They had faced the uncertainties, the complexities of machine and man, and in the end, they emerged victorious. They had breathed life into a legend, a testament to their indomitable spirit and ingenuity. But in the shadows of joy, a sobering thought loomed. What lay ahead for the Panther? Would it now serve as the harbinger of further conflict? Their hearts soared, yet there was a whisper of irony in their triumph. With every victory comes a responsibility. As they stood united, their laughter a rich tapestry, woven against the backdrop of war, they understood that this victory marked not just a reclaiming of power, but a step into an uncertain future, where every roar had its echoes across history. They had brought the Panther to life, but the journey had only just begun. The sun hung low in the sky on a crisp afternoon in April 1945, casting long shadows across the desolate German landscape. In the stillness, the whispers of history echoed through the remnants of war. American troops, weary yet resolute, stood in awe before a remarkable artifact of conflict, a captured Panther tank, the pinnacle of German engineering. As soldiers gathered around the hulking machine, their hearts swelled with a mixture of triumph and curiosity. This behemoth, once a symbol of the enemy's strength, now lay at their feet, conquered yet enigmatic. For months, these men had charged into battle, facing bullets and bombs. But it was this moment that struck a chord deeper than any firefight. What did it mean to stand before such a marvel of complexity, a masterpiece designed to kill? Among the soldiers was Sergeant James Thompson, a mechanic by trade, whose fingers had once balled up a wrench in a garage far from the battlefield. Now, standing beside the Panther, he felt an odd kinship. How could something built with such precision, each bolt a testament to human ingenuity, be a vessel of destruction? The very features that made the Panther formidable in combat, the sloped armor, powerful engine, and precision optics were bewildering to unearth. As the engineers puzzled over the machine's inner workings, each man reflected on the irony of their situation. They had become experts in dismantling the very instruments of war that had haunted their dreams. In this captured moment, Thompson and his comrades stumbled into a deeper understanding of warfare. They found that within the chaos of battle lay the seeds of respect for their adversaries' capabilities. But along with this newfound admiration came the weight of conflict, a realization that the struggle was not merely against the Axis powers, but against the very nature of war itself. Was it stronger to conquer or to understand? The urgency of the task lay before them. If they wished to utilize this tank, to turn it from a monument of the enemy into a tool of their own forces, they had to decipher its secrets. Nonetheless, the complexity of the Panther was staggering. The myriad of switches and levers, the intricate systems intertwined, unveiled a labyrinth of technology that felt almost otherworldly. Days turned into nights as they retraced the technical lineage of this tank, their laughter mingling with frustrations over wiring and mechanics. Thompson, in particular, immersed himself in the challenge, fascinated by the duality of the contraption, both an engineering wonder and an agent of war. As the sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, a sense of camaraderie grew. Soldiers shared stories, dreams, and their hopes for peace amid the clamor of their arrangement. Yet the haunting question lingered in the air. What lessons would they carry forward from such an experience? With the war's end approaching, they pondered the consequences of warfare, realizing that the machines that crushed their comrades were also products of human frailty, desire, and brilliant ingenuity. In capturing the enemy's strength, they had uncovered much about themselves. Each soldier walked away with a newfound respect, understanding that the true triumph lay not merely in victory on the battlefield, but in theirs recognition of the complexities of humanity intertwined in these conflicts. As the Panther stood silent yet defiant in the twilight, the men carried its legacy with them, of challenges faced, of souls lost, and of a bitter yet beautiful reminder that out of destruction often springs a profound understanding. In that moment of reflection, they grasped the essence of their journey, to forge ahead with honor, wisdom, and a commitment to ensure that the ingenuity that had once fueled war might instead illuminate the path toward peace. The battlefield around them, now eerily silent, stood as a vast museum of human ambition and suffering, where every shattered helmet and twisted fragment of steel told a story that transcended borders and generations. With a final glance at the tank, its armor scorched, its cannon pointing toward nothingness, Sergeant Thompson felt the weight of centuries pressing upon his conscience. That machine, once the embodiment of fear and strength, had become a relic of lessons hard learned, a monument to both destruction and resilience. As he led his comrades away, the dust of history clinging to their boots, he understood that they were walking not merely from a site of battle, but from a chapter of humanity's long and painful education in the art of survival. The weight of history rested upon their shoulders as tangibly as the gear they carried. Beneath the surface, the lessons of the past whispered their timeless truths once more, reminding them that progress, unchecked by compassion, had the power to destroy as swiftly as it could build. This was not merely about victory or defeat. It was a pilgrimage of understanding, a reckoning between the brilliance of human innovation and the frailty of human morality. Every gear that turned in the tank's heart, every bullet that once left a rifle's chamber, was born of imagination, the same imagination that painted art, composed music, and dreamed of peace. And yet, within that same spark of creativity lay the potential for ruin. As they moved through the fading light, Thompson reflected on the paradox that had defined their age. The technologies of war, he thought, were not merely machines of might. They were reflections of the human condition itself. Each invention, from the simplest blade to the most complex engine, spoke to a yearning deep within mankind. The desire to conquer challenge, to assert mastery over circumstance. But within that desire was also the seed of tragedy, for mastery without empathy had so often led to catastrophe. Still, he could not help but marvel at the sheer ingenuity of it all. The way steel and oil and fire could be bound together by thought. The way strategy and courage could transform chaos into fleeting order. In that realization lay both sorrow and hope. For if humanity could build instruments of such terrifying precision, then surely it could also build bridges of understanding, systems of compassion, and structures of peace. The tank behind him was not just a weapon, it was a mirror, reflecting what humankind was capable of, both in its darkest and most luminous moments. And so, as Sergeant Thompson and his men disappeared into the horizon, the world seemed to hold its breath, suspended between remembrance and renewal. The war had taught them that the greatest victory was not in the conquest of others, but in the conquest of themselves, and that perhaps was the truest path toward peace.